So I'm back from my work trip in Paris and I am super excited because we are going to talk about the holiday 2024 collection, the Luminous Legends collection from Pat McGrath Labs. I picked up 2 items from this collection. First and foremost, I want to confirm for all of my fellow Europeans here, Pat McGrath Labs now do actually have a warehouse, and it is indeed in the Netherlands, because my package shipped from Eindhoven, which is a city in the Netherlands. So usually in the past couple of years when I have shopped from Pat McGrath Labs, shipping has always come in 2 options: either free shipping that takes forever or at least up to 2 weeks after the package has actually been dispatched, or I could choose for express shipping, which always cost around 17 euros. At least for the past 2 or 3 years, that has always been the case. Now, it was either way my intention to order with express shipping because I really wanted to, for selfish reasons, have the palette as soon as possible. But also I know that a lot of you are really curious what this collection is all about and what I think about it. So I figured this is one of those instances where it is actually worth for me to pay the extra 17 euros. That wasn't necessary because I only got one option when I made my order, and it was DHL free express shipping. So at least for my peeps here in the Netherlands, I don't know about other European countries, the express shipping via DHL is now for free, and my package was dispatched. So I ordered on launch day, which was Friday. My package was dispatched on Monday, and it was scheduled to arrive, and it arrived on Tuesday. I think we've all been collectively hoping that she's finally going to have a freaking warehouse in Europe, because it just seems like such a logical, easier solution instead of making people wait for months or weeks or months for their orders. Anyway, so that was the part about the shipping that I really wanted to share the good news, because this is really great news. For the past few years I feel like I've only been complaining about her shipping, and this is the first time that I'm absolutely ecstatic about it. I have to say, the last couple of times I ordered and my order came from the US, it also was not too bad. They dispatched the package in a timely manner and they were always here within 10-ish days afterwards. So for the past year or so I haven't really had much issues with her shipping, but now I'm ecstatic about it. We're back to the days when you order and a few days later you have your package. So I really hope that this solves the problem for all of us here in Europe. The second thing I wanted to talk about is actually the release went differently this time, and I'm sure all of you who have participated in it have noticed it. So if you're new to Pat McGrath Labs, since I can remember, launch day always comes with her VIP early access. So you sign up with your email address, and then on the day of the launch you get this early access. It's literally about an hour before the official release. So let's say for me, her releases in the past years have always been 3 p.m. The VIP early access is always about an hour earlier, so 2:30 or something of the sorts. And then you always have a 10% off code on the day and the first few days after the release to use. And that code comes with your VIP early access email. There was no code this time. At first I thought it was a mistake, and because the codes are usually something containing a word from the collection and then a 10 next to it, you can bet your bottom's dollar I tried to put in Luminous 10 or Legends 10 to test if maybe they just forgot to send out the code, because I ordered immediately. I didn't want to wait. Sometimes when they forget to send the code, or you tried to use the code but it wasn't working, they will retroactively compensate you for it. I've had that happen. So I thought, if there is a code later on, I can just write them an email and they can reimburse me for it. But then I found out when I was on her Facebook group. So she has a Facebook group, something in the lines of Mothership Palettes by Pat McGrath Labs. Somebody there mentioned that they were in touch with customer service and there would be no code with this collection, which I thought was a little bit strange. It's very different from her previous releases. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know whether they are in such a bad place as a business that they can't afford to give you a 10% off code, or the 10% off code, or the 10% was already sort of worked into the price of the products, being priced somewhat lower than they would be. And I do have a couple of thoughts about that later when we talk about the Mega Mothership. It's become very trendy lately to hate on Pat McGrath Labs collections. I'll be honest, I've participated on the hate train of a couple of those, but I've always done it from the place of just being critical because I know where the brand comes from, I know what they can offer, and I've been dissatisfied with some of their releases. Case on point, I was not a fan of Sunlit Seduction. I still think this is not a great palette. It's a good palette, but it's not a great palette. I did not buy it, and I'm still very critical of it. But with that said, I think we need to just remain objective about it, and my personal opinion about this collection is the Luminous Legends collection an epic collection like we've seen in previous years? No, it is not an epic collection, but objectively speaking, it is a good collection. There is quite a lot for everyone to go around. There are little duo eyeshadows, there are quints, there is the big Mega Mothership palette, there are some lip kits. Yes, we're not getting the bells and whistles this time, I will agree with that. It's not as epic as we are used to, or at least it has been in the previous years. I feel like it's a somewhat smaller, more curated collection, but with that said, I do think it is a good collection. The other thing I wanted to mention before we start is that as I have extensively talked about already in 2 videos, in my emergency meeting video and in my little rant video after that, every single eyeshadow in this collection is in her quint formula. So all the eyeshadows in this collection are made in Italy and are in her quint formula. That may be good news or that may be bad news, because I feel like I personally am a huge fan of this quint formula. However, I know that there are people for whom this formula really doesn't work because it creases on them. I do have to say, I think there is a little bit of a learning curve when it comes to the metallic eyeshadows in her quint formula, because they're not powders, they feel more like creams rather than powders, and I think it's very easy to go overboard when you're applying these eyeshadows, in which case you're going to see a lot of texture on your lids, they're going to look very chunky, they're not going to look as sparkly. This is the kind of formula where I feel like less is more, and you really have to go into it using it like that. Less is more. But like I said, for me, great news, because I love that formula. I was really happy to have like a whole Mega Mothership in that formula. And to go back to the price, so let me show you the Mega Mothership. The Mega Mothership this year comes in what I would say pretty standard holiday packaging from Pat McGrath Labs. It has like the little bejeweled, you know, bows and you know, the cover. I think it's really pretty, it's festive, it's very much in line with what we've been getting in previous releases. So this is the Mega Mothership that we are getting this year. It is called, like I said, Luminous Legends, only quint formula, and it comes with 15 eyeshadows, unlike previous releases where we have gotten either 9 eyeshadows and 2 blushes or 18 eyeshadows. This year we're only getting 18 eyeshadows. I want to mention everything is cardboard except for this insert here, which is plastic, and this is a close-up of all the eyeshadows. I'm going to do close-up of the palette later on with a little bit of artificial lighting, swatches and stuff, but that's going to be, you know, in my desk view, because I will not have time to film it now. I'll have to come back after work to do the filming of the swatches and all of that, which I think is better because it gives me more opportunity to do some comparison swatches, to shine artificial lighting and all. Right now I'm actually just going to do a look in a little bit because I have a meeting, so I have to hurry a bit. But what I wanted to say is, usually her quints with 5 eyeshadows of this formula cost 35 euros. This whole palette was 70 euros. So essentially you're getting one of these like quints sort of for free. So I feel like the Mega Mothership is at a very advantageous price this year, because, and I cannot stress this enough, this is a more expensive formula. You cannot compare this to her previous palettes and say there are less eyeshadows in here, why are we paying the same price? Because you're not paying for the same formula, you're paying for a more expensive formula. The other thing that I chose to purchase from this collection was one of the little duos, and of course, to no one's surprise, I chose the little duo with the green eyeshadow. I think this is called Celestial Jade. Very pretty. I think I'm actually going to use this one in a little bit. And again, I can confirm this is also in the quint formula. I think obviously I'm attracted to green eyeshadow, it's one of my favorite eyeshadow colors, but also just for science I wanted to make absolutely sure that these little duos are also in the quint formula, because there's one specific duo which is called Blitz Astral, and there were some fake news going around that it might be in the Blitz Astral Baked formula, which it ain't. I think it's too early to say whether this is a good palette or a great palette. I think undoubtedly it is a good palette. You're getting a really good variety of colors. I think it's really festive with all the sparkly shades in here. I think it's really nice. It's a good variety of mattes because there are only 3 mattes in here. These 3, 1, 2, 3. But I feel like they're the kind of mattes that would work with a variety of different shades in here. I personally do not feel the need to have more mattes in this palette. But I do want to add that even the mattes in this formula are really outstanding. They feel like cream to powders. They're very flattering on the lid. They're very blendable. They just look really stunning on the eyes, and same goes for the metallic eyeshadows. I think it is a pretty like standard combination of colors. There's your neutrals, there's your warm neutrals, cooler neutrals, there's a purple, there is this like bluish green eyeshadow, and there is this sparkly blue. So does it like eerily remind us of Odyssey and possibly Celestial Divinity and Celestial Nirvana? I don't think Celestial Nirvana. I think the palette this reminds me the most of is Celestial Odyssey. But again, you're getting it in a different formula, so you gotta ask yourself, you know, is it really the same thing? To me, it's not really the same thing. They're still like different, they have a different vibe to them, but that's just me. If you're pragmatic and you just care about colors, then this is probably going to be quite redundant in your collection. But if you care about formula and colors, I think this is a really good palette and it comes at a really good price. And we all know eventually it's going to be on sale. So if you have patience for that, just wait for the sale. Okay, welcome to my desk view. We're going to now swatch the palette, and I'm also going to do a couple of relevant comparison swatches. I'm going to try to limit the comparison swatches to what I think is the most relevant or most interesting. So here is the Luminous Legends for you in her full glory. Hopefully you are able to see the eyeshadows quite well. And now I think without further ado, oh, maybe let's just quickly show you also Celestial Jade, so the little duo that I got. Also a little bit in the sunlight so that you can see the beautiful sparklies. And then we can continue with swatches. I'm first going to swatch the Luminous Legends palette for you. And I think the way I'm going to do this is I'm first going to swatch the 3 mattes, and then we're going to go to the metallics. So here we have swatches of the 3 matte shades. So this is Sun-Kissed Rose, then we have Coral Caress, and last but not least we have Sable Seductress. So you have this like rosy shade, like rosy browny nudie shade, then Coral Caress is more of your classic coral type shade, and Sable Seductress is a beautiful deep brown, which I would say doesn't really lean warm or cool, it's quite neutral in tone. Okay, that was not very smart, but I missed this shade here. This is the shade Rose Afterglow, which seems like maybe it's also a matte eyeshadow actually, or like one of those like matte with sparkles. I'm sorry guys, I totally missed that in my count for matte eyeshadows. I was convinced that this is more of like a metallic shade. I actually don't think this is a matte shade. I do see a little bit of a sheen here, but this is more of those like satins with a little bit of a shimmer to it. That's this is a little bit out of order now, but we have Golden Muse, Rose Afterglow, Flame Fatale, and Stardust Peony. Stardust Peony is absolutely gorgeous, it is so pretty. Golden Muse is more of a topper shade, and I want to point out that Golden Muse is very chunky. I don't know whether you can see that. I'm hoping that my camera is focusing now and you're able to see this, but this is quite a chunky and flaky shade. This is a shade you have to really be careful with. Okay, middle row, we have Bordeaux Bliss, which seems to be a Bordeaux metallic. I wouldn't really call it a sparkly shade. I don't really see much sparkle in here. It's more of like a pure metallic. Then we have Orchid Opulence, which is a magenta with blue sparkles. Then we have this absolutely beautiful shade here, which is called Moonlit Mist, which is residing somewhere between a green and a blue, but it really leans more towards the blue. And last but not least, we have Platinum Lilac, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's one of those like taupey, cool-toned lilac shades. I love this shade. I can't wait to play around with this shade. So I clearly underestimated how these swatches are going to fit on my arm, so we're at a very unfortunate spot here on my arm, but hopefully you're going to see the swatches, and I'm also going to show them to you in different lighting in a second. But here we have Honey Nectar, which is a beautiful nude shade that I find really difficult to describe. It's just such a beautiful chameleon shade. Then we have the shade Celestial Cerulean, which is a dark blue, which is loaded with purple and blue sparkles. Then we have Gilded Bronze, which is a beautiful bronze, very, very metallic. And finally we have our good old friend here, Lunar Luxury, which is a gorgeous taupe silver shade. So here you have a bit of a close-up of all the eyeshadows with a little bit of artificial lighting on them so that you can see a bit better the sparkles. I don't think my camera is focusing really well. Let's immediately proceed with swatching the Celestial Jade duo so that we can also do the comparison swatch with Citrine Envy from the Odyssey palette. So this duo contains Moonlit, what was this called again? Moonlit Gold, which I would describe as a neutral champagne gold. And then we have this beautiful Celestial Jade here, which is more of like a sage green. Let me immediately pull out Citrine Envy because I'm just so incredibly curious how this shade compares to Citrine Envy. So here we have Celestial Odyssey. This is the Mega Mothership from 2021, and let me swatch that immediately next to Celestial Jade so we can compare. Oh, what do you know, they are very, very similar to each other. So if you have Citrine Envy, this Celestial Jade here to me is almost an identical shade, just in a different formula. And might I add, Citrine Envy already has a pretty fabulous formula as it is, so you're not really getting much more in terms of impact or, you know, sparkle with this new Celestial Jade shade. So just wanted to mention that because I think it's important to a lot of you. I feel like possibly this would be the palette that comes the closest in terms of a color story to this new Luminous Legends palette. I think the other Mega Mothership palettes, while there may be similar shades in there, are not going to be such a good match. But when you just look at the colors of these two palettes, there is a lot of, you know, overlapping here. There are some like browny shades, also like a darker brown, a somewhat lighter brown. Yes, they're different tones, but you know, you're getting like similar vibes over here. You have a flame orange kind of shade. Between these two, you know, there's probably quite a bit of similarity. There is also this coral shade in here. You're getting this gorgeous shade here from the Celestial Odyssey palette, which reminds me a lot of this one here. So I'm actually going to swatch the two because I'm just curious how similar they are to each other. So this is one of my favorite shades from Odyssey. This is the shade Bronze Nova. So let's swatch Bronze Nova, and I feel like you can once again appreciate that they're very similar shades. In terms of the sparkle, in terms of the idea, they're quite similar. So this just, you know, strengthens my belief that this Luminous Legends palette is very, very inspired by a very successful Celestial Odyssey palette. Yeah, Honey Nectar isn't exactly going to be, you know, a match for this shade here, but they're still similar enough to each other. You know, I don't want to swatch them all side by side because, like I said, to me it also matters that they are in a different formula. But if you just cared about the colors, for instance, you have this platinum, like lilac-y shade here. These two are... oh, we have to do it, right? We have to swatch them side by side. I mean, I do like the formula of the new one, of course, a lot better because it's a lot more impactful. I mean, in this case, you can see how much more dull the shade from the Odyssey palette is and how much more sparkly and reflective the new one is. But the idea is the same, right? Like, and with these two and these two, you can barely tell the difference in the finishes. They look so similar to each other that on the eye, you're probably not going to be able to tell much of a difference. Except for this one, where you can clearly tell which one is which. Okay, I'm going to put Celestial Odyssey away before I find even more shade in here that I want to do comparison swatches with. And I want to briefly address the repeats that are present in the Luminous Legends palette. Now, when it comes to repeats in this palette, that are like spot on one-on-one repeats in terms of the finish, the formula, and the color, there are 3. And these are Lunar Luxury over here, Sun-Kissed Rose, and finally we have Honey Nectar. There is a shade in Celestial Nirvana which is called Flame Fatale, so it's a match for this shade here, but it's in a matte finish, so it's a completely different eyeshadow. I don't know why they would use the same name, that's just freaking confusing. And then we have the shade here which is called Sable Seductress, and she has a shade in one of her Love Collection palettes which has a very similar name, so I'm assuming they only changed the name because of the different like formula of this eyeshadow, but probably we're talking about the same color. I want to actually swatch side by side the 3 one-on-one repeats just to see whether they're the same. So this is my Lunar Luxury from my Bronze Bliss Quint. As you can see, I have loved this eyeshadow a lot. I even have a backup of it because I love it so much. And here is the new one. Okay, at least like this, they seem rather identical to me. Lunar Luxury is essentially the same eyeshadow, so these two are completely identical. Let's see about Honey Nectar. So the eyeshadow here, and this one is from the Quint from last year, which is called Bronze Ecstasy. Let's first swatch the old one and then the new one. These seem rather similar to me as well. So this is old, no, this is new. Well, it doesn't matter which one is which because they're identical to each other. Okay, so Honey Nectar is also the exact same eyeshadow, there's no difference here. And finally, from the Sunset Romance, we have this shade here, the shade Sun-Kissed Rose, which is a dupe of one of the mattes in Luminous Legends, so this one here. Let me swatch these two side by side just to see whether they're the same shade. And I'm actually just going to do that here on the back of my hand. Okay, new one, old one. Huh? Okay. So, Past Mariam used this eyeshadow on her eyes this morning and she noted that there is a little bit of a difference. So these two are still very close to each other, but I have the feeling that the new one is just a little bit lighter in tone and it applies a bit more like a nudie rosy shade, whereas the one from Sunset Romance applies with somewhat stronger rosy tones to it. So there is a little bit of a difference here, but you know, batch to batch differences can also result in differences like this, even within the same eyeshadow, within the same eyeshadow palette. So Sunset Sun-Kissed Rose is the only one where I noticed like a slight difference. I also want to point out that this shade here, the shade Petalic Passion, is another repeat. It is present in one of the little duos for this year. I don't have that duo, I didn't buy it, but I just wanted to point out that there is a duo which contains this eyeshadow as well, also from Sun-Kissed Romance. So here we have another one of the quints from last year. This is in Lunar Nightshade. I don't think that the blues in here are similar to each other. This is much brighter in tone. We could swatch the Platinum Lilac shade next to the shade Pale Amethyst, but I don't think they're going to be super similar to each other. I think Pale Amethyst is more taupe, whereas the new one is more lilac in tone. Yeah, that is the case. So this is the shade from Lunar Nightshade. It's much more like a nude, you know, rose champagne. The new one has much stronger purple tones to it. We have here the Bordeaux Brilliance, no, Bordeaux Bliss from last year. And I was thinking, are there shades in here that might be similar? Yeah, okay, so let's watch this one here. It seems a little bit similar to this one here. This is the shade Cosmic Garnet. So let's watch them side by side. So we have Cosmic Garnet and we have Bordeaux Brilliance. I don't think they're the same shade. No, the old one is sparklier and has quite a bit of like red glitter to it. The new one is much more like a classic Bordeaux shade. So these two are not very similar to each other. There is one more comparison I want to make, and you're probably wondering why are you pulling out a Mothership palette? And I will tell you immediately. So this shade here very much reminds me of one of our favorite shades, Astral Luna Gold, I think it is called. This one here. reminds me of this one over here, the shade Golden Muse, I want to say. Golden Muse, yes, this is Golden Muse. And obviously they're not like one-on-one use because they're completely different formulas. This is Quint, this is a Blitz shade. However, I do feel like they're very similar in terms of the idea. So let's watch them side by side. Okay, Golden Muse is much more golden, whereas this also has quite a bit of like a green tone to it. I do feel like there's a bit of a similarity in the base tone, like that very eerie, like pale lavender kind of shade. I must warn you once again, this is a very chunky shade. This one almost applies like a cream. You have to take the absolute tiniest bit and then really work it onto the skin in order to get it to like spread evenly around. Otherwise you're going to get little chunks like this. I don't know whether you can see that. Well, I hope Future Mariam did a good job with the swatches, and now we can proceed to the eye look because I literally only have like 15 minutes left before I have to leave to work. So the first thing I'm going to do is I will go into this palette and the shade Sun-Kissed Rose, this one in here, which is theoretically a repeat from the Sunset Romance palette, and I'm going to take a little bit of that and put that through my crease as, you know, a blending out shade. Just FYI, if that wasn't clear, I am already wearing eyeshadow primer, and something that maybe I can quickly add about this formula as I'm going through the motions is something that I find really helpful with this eyeshadow formula not creasing on me is using a combination of an eyeshadow primer and glitter glue. And when it comes to the glitter glue, some of you will probably be really tired of hearing this. Do you see how beautifully this blended out? Just gorgeous, and it looks so nice on the lid. Do not use, well, if you have oily eyelids like me, do not use Pat's Intensifies stick, because when I used this specific formula with the Intensify stick, so I applied an eyeshadow primer, I applied my Intensify stick, and then the eyeshadows, they creased on me really badly. So I think it's important to find the correct combination of an eyeshadow primer and glitter glue if you're going to use this formula, if you have very oily eyelids and you're struggling with these eyeshadows creasing on you. And I'm going to only find out in the future whether it's actually the same eyeshadow as the one in Sunset Romance, but somehow I'm getting the feeling that the one in Sunset Romance is much more terracotta and this is much more brown. I'm very curious how that went down with the comparison swatches. Next I'm going to take a smaller pencil crease type brush, and I'm going to go into the deep matte brown shade here. This is the shade Sable Seductress, and I'm going to apply that as my, you know, sort of like outer corner moment to deepen out the crease. Now, if it did actually turn out that that Sun-Kissed Rose shade is a different tone from the one in the Quint, I am very happy with the change because I like this a lot better. The other one, while very pretty, and I think it really fits the tones of the Sunset Romance Quint with those terracotta shades, would have been somewhat more limiting in its tone comparing to this, because this is much more like a lighter brown shade and a gorgeous like shade of brown, so I don't mind this change if it has really occurred. I'm going to take a smaller pencil brush and I'm just going to go back into that Sun-Kissed Rose shade, the one that I applied to my crease. I'm going to put it on the lower lashes. To be honest with you, I've been really out of it because I didn't really have time in Paris to watch any YouTube, so I don't know if a lot of videos have already come out. I had a really quick glance yesterday and I couldn't really find anything, so I have the feeling that either people haven't been buying this palette or they haven't really gotten it yet, and I'm really lucky and I got it really fast. I'm going to take my NYX glitter glue, which is my preferred glitter glue of choice, and I'm going to apply a little bit of that on my moving lid and also in my inner corners as a base for the delicious metallic eyeshadows. Now, when it comes to the metallic eyeshadows, again, I wanted to make it very clear, with this formula, less is more. You can use a brush, you can use your fingers, but just make sure that you're not taking too much. Now I'm going to go into the shade Gilded Bronze here, because that looks absolutely delightful and it looks like such a Mariam color. And I would rather start with a little bit and build up than take too much and regret my choices. And no matter whether you're using a brush or, you know, your fingers, just make sure that you're really like spreading this formula out. This formula really likes to be spread out a bit so that it doesn't bunch up, and it also reveals its sparkly side. Wow, this is a very pretty shade, and I can tell you already that it reminds me of one of my favorite shades from Celestial Odyssey. So given all of this, I'm probably going to swatch quite a few shades from Celestial Odyssey against the colors in here. I'm going to grab my blending brush and just give everything a nice little blend in the crease. Then I think I'm actually going to now go into my little Celestial Jade duo, and I'm going to apply first this green shade here, which is actually called Celestial Jade, and I'm going to again use a little bit like this on my flat brush, and I'm going to put that here in the inner corners of my eyes. I am not going to put it in the like tear duct area though, because I think it's too dark for that. All that shade reminds me so much of Citrine Envy. I would be willing to bet that future Mariam probably discovered that they're essentially the same shade in a different formula. And if they're not the same shade, they're very, very close. So incredibly similar. Fun fact, yesterday when I received the palette and in like the night artificial lighting, I actually thought that this shade right here would be like a light mint green, and then I decided to like center my whole outfit around having, you know, my favorite mint green inner corner. And I discovered when I opened the palette this morning that this eyeshadow is not at all a mint green. It's more like a light mint blue. Not really mint, it's more like a light blue. And finally, for my inner corner highlight shade, I am going to go back into the Mega Mothership, and I'm going to take the shade Golden Muse, which is this one here. This one feels like it's extra sparkly and extra chunky, so I will try to be extra careful with this shade when I apply it. I'm going to just take literally a few flakes like this on my brush, and I'm going to really work it into my inner corners, because I don't want it to fly around, and I don't want it to start looking really chunky. And this shade reminds me so much of the Blitz shade from Mothership 5, with that strong golden sheen and sort of like that almost like light lilac-y base to it. And I'm actually curious if I can take this golden gilded shade and I can work a few of those flakes here over the green and a little bit especially at the border with that bronze shade, just to make the transition a little bit smoother, and maybe add a few extra flakes of sparkle. I'm trying, like I literally put the absolute tiniest bit of that shade, and I'm not going to put any more. I'm just going to spread it around using a clean finger, because this is one of those shades that I think you could go overboard with really, really fast. And here, as promised, is Sparkle Moment, so we can appreciate how extremely glittery these eyeshadows are. Okay, so because I anticipated this look to go in a somewhat more cooler direction, I was wearing actually Sorcery from Lisa Eldridge. And I haven't worn Sorcery since the cooler months. I was actually debating between this and Decade, and then I thought, oh, Decade might be just a little bit of overkill and too dark for the look that I'm going for today. And then as I was doing the look, the look like took a much warmer direction. Then I thought, oh no, this is completely mismatched now. So I have a little bit of the Affair Gloss from Lisa Eldridge over top of Sorcery to give it a bit of a warmer hue, which I think fits slightly better with the look. I think this look would probably have fit better with something like Cinnabar or Flash 5 from Pat McGrath Labs, but it's too late now. I really have to run to work because I'm already almost too late. But I wanted to say as a final thought, can you not achieve this exact same look with things that you already have from Pat McGrath Labs? You absolutely can. Even just by pulling Celestial Odyssey, you can achieve an extremely similar look to this. So I'm not going to give you any like final thoughts on this palette right now because it's just too early. However, I am going to come back to do a week of Luminous Legends using just the palette. So yes, I am going to do what I usually do, which is like a deep dive into this palette, like 5 consecutive looks with it, and only at the end of that journey am I going to tell you how I really feel about this palette. For now, I like it. My initial thoughts would be you can achieve a similar look to this if you dig into older products from Pat McGrath Labs. Maybe I just dug into the wrong tones of this palette, and if I had gone for different colors, I would have thought that they're a little bit more unique. But like I said, if you have an extensive Pat McGrath Labs eyeshadow collection, it's very likely that you can already achieve this look. I think this is for people who don't already have an extensive eyeshadow palette collection from Pat McGrath Labs and want something that is a little bit more of like a zhuzhed up formula, because I do think that the Queen formula is more special than her regular formula. Let me know what you thought about this look. Let me know what you think about this palette, this release. Did you buy it? What did you buy? What are your thoughts? You know, let's just, as usual, have a wonderful discussion in my comment section. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!